Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Varsity Voices podcast, where we bring you information and some of the inside scoop about Chicago Catholic League football and info on high school football in Illinois. Make sure you follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and on X at varsity_voices1. You can also email us at varsityvoices312@gmail.com. I'm Joe Frevaletti, one of your hosts, and here with me is your other host, my brother Dan Frevaletti. And Dan, today we're going to take a look at the ever-important non-conference games that usually start the season for most teams, including those in the Chicago Catholic League. And tell me why I say these games are ever important.
It is really interesting to look at this as a whole and to see how different teams schedule. And you're always thinking about playoff points, right? So you can look at it a couple of ways. You can play a really tough non-conference schedule, understanding that the better the teams you play, you will still, even if you lose, you still get their points for every game they win. So if you get beat week 1 or week 2 and that team goes on to win 6, 7, 8 games, you get 6, 7, 8 points, which is how you then become a priority when it comes to playoff selection week. If you are 5-4, 4-5, the more points you have, the better you're going to be. So it is a fine line that these teams walk when trying to select their non-conference schedule. I know a lot of time goes into it. They go back and forth with several different schools because of the success of the league as a whole. It can be challenging to find teams that want to play you, but you can always say, hey, look, we're gonna win some games. We play in this conference. You have the potential to get these points, win or lose. So it could be a good thing. I know there's a lot of thought that goes into playing these games, and you'll see as we look through this schedule how teams look at it. You definitely get an idea of what teams think of their own program, how they want to start the season, whether they're looking at their early conference schedule. There's a lot that goes into it, and I know that you found some interesting teams. I found some interesting teams. That's you've got to, and this is probably a whole show on scheduling and what it means and why. And I know one of the reasons they did this with the combination of the Chicago Catholic League and the East Suburban Catholic was that you might have more opportunities to schedule non-conference games within this league. So if you struggle to get a non-conference opponent, you might be able to go within your own league and find a school that's doing the same. And I know we see that in some of these cases, whether it's they want to keep a rivalry alive, whether they both are struggling to get a week 2 game, whatever it might be. There's a lot of different factors that go into putting these non-conference schedules together, but they always are done with playoff points on their mind.
Yeah, there's definitely a strategy behind it, and when I was looking at some of the information and the different teams, non-conference teams that some of the schools are playing, you can tell there's some strategy that goes into it, but there's only so much strategy that can go into it, right? Because the other team needs to want to play you.
It comes down to, do they want to come here or host us?
Yeah,
week 1 or 2.
There's some teams in the Chicago Catholic League. It reminds me of like musical chairs where they spin around and around and around and around. And they sit down and nobody's left at the end. So, the school has to find somebody that they can play. And a lot of times strategy doesn't play into it at that point. They've just got to take the school that's available, right?
Yeah. Well, the calendar doesn't stop. I mean, it's coming, August 30th or August 31st is coming, whether you like it or not. So, at some point you've got to say, all right, we've exhausted all the avenues. Let's do what's easy, or let's make this deal with the team and make sure we're prepared.
Yeah, and because of that, there's going to be some really good games.
Oh yeah.
There's
Oh
teams
yeah.
at the end. Just for example, and we'll talk about this a little bit. Loyola. I'm sure nobody wanted to play Loyola the
No,
first game of the
can't be a
year,
race to get there, right?
non-conference, but also nobody wanted to play East St. Louis. I can just see the athletic director calling up. Do you have an opponent week one? I'm sure nobody wants to play you either. And like, no, we don't. Do you have one? No, we don't have one either. All right, let's play each other. That's going to be an awesome game.
If you could put it on national TV, and who knows, it might be one of those ESPN plus or whatever network they use, early games, because that is certainly the marquee matchup, I think, for week one. And jumping right into it, look at Loyola and East St. Louis, two schools that aren't afraid of anybody. East St. Louis traditionally says bring it on. They play a national schedule. Loyola, they're the blue division is loaded to kick it off, hosting East St. Louis. That's it. That's at Loyola, right? Yeah. East St.
That's at
Louis is always
Loyola. Yeah,
willing to travel.
they
They'll have
love
a
to
great,
travel. Yep.
they'll have a great group that comes up. They have a lot of fun. That definitely is a great way to kick things off, because that'll be the matchup that people are talking about that week.
Yeah, I think you and I probably need to go out to that game, Dan.
Yes, for
First
sure.
first week of the year, game of the week, right? Go out
Yeah,
there and we'll set up a live show or something, and we'll report directly from the game.
that would be awesome.
Yeah,
That would be awesome if we could have people come by, impromptu guests, right? We never
yeah.
know what we might get. Yeah,
So listeners, weigh in. Send us an email. Leave a comment. Say, yeah, we would love for you guys to go out to the Loyola East St. Louis game and report directly from there, and we will listen for sure.
yeah, and that's probably a Saturday game, right? I think Loyola plays all their games on Saturday. I
Right.
know they're talking about lights, but I don't think that they've done that yet. So that's going to be a Saturday afternoon. They'll have the data themselves for the most part, and it should definitely be really well attended. Probably a lot of people there. It'd be a great place to broadcast from.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So let's jump into this, Dan. One of the divisions that I took a look at was the Green Division in the CCL. So that's St. Ignatius, Joliet Catholic, Marist, and Notre Dame. All right. And some of the information I looked at obviously was who they're going to play this year, and true non-conference games. Looked at some of the information from how these teams did last year, whether they played or not, or played each other or not, or what the record was, those types of things, and also looked at it through the lens of why these schools are playing each other. Primarily from a CCL standpoint. As far as is there any strategy behind this or not, as far as why they picked this school. But let's get into the different divisions, Dan, and where they're at as far as some of their non-conference games to start the season. Let's go to the Green Division first.
Okay.
And the first team here is St. Francis, right? So their first game, non-conference game, is against Kenwood, which is from the Chicago Public League. I believe they're in the Red Division. So, St. Francis last year was 10-3 overall, 2-1 in their division. They lost the state championship game to Nazareth, right? Last year, for their two non-conference games to start the season, they played Downers Grove North, who they lost to, and then they played Sterling, who they beat. This year, like I mentioned, the first game they're taking on Kenwood from the Chicago Public League, who last year went 8-5 overall and 6-1 in their conference play. So they had a good season. They played St. Rita twice. If you're looking for other teams they played in the CCL, so they played St. Rita twice last year and lost both times. Once during the regular season, they lost 33-20, and then in the Prep Bowl where they lost 21-7. You would think that St. Francis would have the edge in this game, but Kenwood has shown that they can score a lot of points, right? And they can be an offensive juggernaut when they're clicking. I think last year they averaged over 30 points a game. So I don't think this is going to be a pushover for St. Francis, but I do think this has the ability to be a really good game.
Yeah, and they, St. Francis is hosting Kenwood, so that always helps. I'm sure they looked at their schedule last year, and they've made a change a little bit, right? They go from um, you know starting at Downers Grove North last year, big challenge, big school out in the suburbs, and just kind of made a change and looked for a couple different teams. They might be one of these schools that is having a hard time, finding schools to play. That might be the challenge here. And you look at Kenwood is a great opponent because it's not a layup by any stretch of the imagination. Kenwood's likely going to be really solid in the red division of the Chicago Public League this year. So it's a really, really good week one opponent for St. Francis.
Yeah, and like you said, they may be having trouble, right, finding some schools to play, and that brings me to their next game. We can look at this real quickly. There's a school in St. Louis, Missouri called the Lift for Life Academy. Had a little bit of trouble finding a fair amount of information on it, but what I did find was last year they had a record of 8-5 overall. They look to be an independent program, or I think what the state of Missouri calls it is a freelance program. But last year I think they won the district title for the first time in school history. So I would think, even based on some of that limited information, that St. Francis is probably a heavy favorite in this game, in their second game. But you never know, right? But
don't discount the drive, right? You've got to go to St. Louis, whether they go the night before or get up and go that same day. Never an easy thing to travel and be that far away. I also don't know how much trap games come into play in high school and especially early in the season. But looking at their following week, they're at Loyola, so it is something where you want to make sure that the kids are focused. And sometimes, boy, that ride to St. Louis, you just hope that everyone is focused, for focused but relaxed on that bus ride, right? And you don't want to be too high or too low, and you certainly do not want them looking ahead to Loyola. They could be walking into a trap there.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so the next school in the Green Division we'll take a look at is Nazareth Academy. So their first game this year, non-conference game, is against Kankakee in the Southland Conference. Now, for sure, this is no pushover, right?
Right.
I mean, last year, Kankakee, I think, was 11-1 overall, 7-0 in their conference. They beat Naz last year 33-26 in the first game of the season. They pretty much dominated their conference, ended up losing to East St. Louis in the playoffs. No shame there. They can score a ton of points.
A ton of points.
Listen to this. They beat Thornridge last year 81-0. Have you ever heard that kind of
It's unbelievable.
Sport? I haven't.
Unbelievable.
They averaged over 45 points a game last year. So, what I'm thinking is expect a bit of a shootout here. But as we know, and we've talked a little bit about already, Naz has got a really good defense. We'll see how that does holding up against this kind of offense. And maybe advantage Naz is because maybe last year they didn't know what they were facing, but this year they do know. So we'll see what happens.
yeah, so much experience back for a state championship team. It's hard to think that they will overlook anybody. And if I'm the coach, I'm happy that they lost to them last year, because they will have a little extra juice for that game to get back at Kankakee. They host them in LaGrange Park, so I do think that Nazareth should be really poised. But again, that is going to be that should be a fun game to watch. I'm guessing there's going to be a ton of points scored. Who do you got next, Joe?
Yeah, their second game is against Kenwood. We just talked about them. Props to Kenwood. I think for their non-conference schedule, they're taking on St. Francis week 1, Naz week 2. Again, no pushover. We talked about that. I still would assume that Naz probably has a slight edge in that game as well.
I would think so too. Good. Like you said, props for Kenwood. It's going to prepare them. I think some schools look at this, they will schedule thinking about the playoffs. If Kenwood is a favorite in their division, they will likely be a playoff team. And these two first weeks of the season can do nothing but prepare them for the playoffs.
Right. Absolutely. All right. So let's see. Next team in the Green Division is IC Catholic. So this one was a bit interesting to me, Dan. I can't tell from the two schools that IC has scheduled whether or not they were trying to schedule teams that were being a little more strategic here and trying to schedule teams that, they can, I'd say guarantee a win, but pretty much guarantee a win. Or if they just had a hard time finding teams that wanted to play them, right? So
Right.
The first school is Rowe Clark Math and Science Academy. I had not heard of this program or this school. They're part of the Noble League, which other schools within this league are Pritzker College Prep, UIC College Prep, Rauner College Prep, Hansbury College Prep. I think you see the pattern there. They're all college prep schools. But they are, I couldn't even find them in the IHSA website as far as, any type of conference or anything they play in. So I think they're an independent type league that just plays other college prep teams, right? So last year they went 4-4. And not sure of the competition, not sure why IC would be playing this team. Looking for this to really be an easy win to start the season. Could be 100-0, right?
Yeah, it's definitely one that ICB favored in. I guess you don't. There's not a real deep football tradition in the what was the name of the Noble Conference?
The Noble
Great
League.
Kids,
Yeah.
Noble League. So I'm sure that they're looking forward to IC Catholic. It's probably the biggest name they'll play that year, this year. But yeah, it's like we discussed, you are balancing, looking at your schedule in the Catholic League, thinking either I need a couple wins because the Catholic League is so tough, or no one will play us. These are the only schools that'll play us. Who knows, what other incentive, may be there. But I look for IC in their first 2 weeks. Their second week is not much different, right?
No, not much different. They're playing Chicago Military Academy, who I've heard of at least.
Right.
Last year, though, they didn't have a very good year. They were 2-6. Their 2 wins coming against 2 teams I've never heard of, Catalyst Maria and Sonorio. So one of the interesting things is that both of these schools don't even show the non-conference games against IC on their schedule.
Right. They've got bigger concerns. They've got bigger concerns in their first 2 weeks of the football season.
Yeah, so I think there's a good chance IC starts the year 2-0.
Yeah, I would definitely take that bet for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so the last team in the Green Division, St. Rita. So they've scheduled Sandburg for their first game of the year. So St. Rita beat Sandburg last year. Let's see. St. Rita won the Prepo last year, right? With an 8-5
Mhm.
overall record.
That's correct.
Even though they were 0-3 in their division, which I find interesting.
Yeah,
They had
that's a good division.
some trouble, right? Tough division, some trouble with the better teams in the conference. Hamburg was 6-4 overall and 3-1 in their conference. They played St. Rita last year, lost to them in the first game of the season. So I think, based on where these two schools are at, you're probably looking at the same result, right? Week one. Sandburg's been a somewhat up and down program over the past decade, but they've had some sustained success, just not lately. But I mean, they made the playoffs last year, got in with 6-4 overall, and I don't know, it could be a good game between these two teams.
Yeah, definitely one to kind of circle. Maybe just a little bit to keep an eye on week one because it's Sandburg has been they were down for a lot of years in the past couple of years. I know when they made the playoffs again, it was the first time I think in several years that they had done that. But man, they should be. They're one of those programs that you look at and you're like, this should be a good team. But St. Rita's been really really strong on the lower levels. They have had great success even when they've struggled on the varsity level. They've been great on the lower levels. I think they do a really good job of prepping those the underclassmen to come up and be ready to play their schedule when they come. So I do look for St. Rita to kind of reload. They'll be in the green division down from or changing from the blue last year. So I would think St. Rita's in a good spot. Week one against Sandburg.
Yeah, I would think so too. Second week, Rita plays Mount Carmel. We'll see what happens with that. Not necessarily. I mean, it's considered non-conference, but it's still within the Chicago Catholic League. So,
And I'm happy that they have, you know, done that. Schools don't have to do that. That's a traditional rivalry. Two schools that obviously go way back. Always one of the top games of the week, and this year will be no different. And it's. I think it's really nice. I don't know if there's any. We must play St. Rita or we must play Mount Carmel for St. Rita, but it is nice that that rivalry is kept alive, even though they could both really go outside if they wanted to, seeing that they're both within the Catholic League. But it's one of a couple that I noticed in doing a little research on this that have maintained a rivalry, which you always worry about when you come to these big conferences.
yeah. Okay. All right. So that's the green division, Dan. What do you got? What division
All
do
right,
you
well,
got
we'll
here?
talk about the white division first. So we'll start with Carmel Catholic in the white division. They open at Grays Lake Central, but the big one that I kind of highlighted for them as far as the non-conference schedule was Lake Forest. So that's kind of a rivalry game. One of the things I looked at, I wanted to see how close these schools are. I always think that matters when kids have played with and against each other. Growing up, they're going to be a lot of people that know one another on that field. So these two schools are 9.1 miles apart. So they definitely will know one another. Carmel beat Lake Forest last year at Lake Forest 20-10. I think Carmel is getting nothing but better. Lake Forest has been like a solid. I'd call them a solid program the last few years. So this will be a fun game to watch week two for Carmel
Yeah, and this is at you said at Carmel this year.
at Carmel. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that probably plays in their favor, right? And like you said, you know, they seem to be getting better and better every year, so
yeah,
that probably spells trouble for Lake Forest here.
yeah. And um, it'll be interesting to see what the record is overall for the league week one. It's something I definitely want to track how they do non-conference wise. Moving on to Fenwick. Fenwick opens at Oak Park River Forest. But the big one here will be St. Ignatius week 2, where they host St. Ignatius. And, St. Ignatius had a great season last year, but actually Fenwick beat St. Ignatius
Right.
in
Early
what
on the
might
season,
be,
right?
yeah,
A little
yeah,
early. Yeah.
probably considered a bit of an upset. So there's some fuel for St. Ignatius coming in, and again, another good conference or league opponent that is playing a non-conference game. An interesting thing, Joe, about these two schools, they also are 9.1 miles apart. So, so little, I thought, wow, how great would it be if I had 4 or 5 that were 9.1 miles apart? But
Maybe
the,
that's a condition of the white division is they all be 9.1 miles apart from each other.
right. Just a little known facts here you find on the Varsity Voices. So
Yeah,
yeah, so week two hosting St. Ignatius will definitely be the one to watch.
it will.
Um, Montini opens up against Hyde Park at home, and then they host Hillcrest. So Montini had traditionally has done a really good job scheduling. They have they have done they have really figured that balance out, of playing teams that they probably would be favored against, and if by any prognosticators, but teams that will go on and likely have a pretty good record. Montini beat Hillcrest last year, but again, I'm gonna watch this game because the next week Montini's at Marist. Great
Yeah.
opening game for their conference schedule, and to you got to watch that for again another early maybe trap game. Hillcrest runs really interesting offense. They've got athletes where they can get in the end zone, and so they are a strong, always traditionally a strong running game. Played these teams last year. We'll see Hillcrest again playing another conference Chicago Catholic League opponent. So certainly, like I said, a good balance where I think Montini is favored, but certainly not something where your second team is going to be in by the beginning of the second quarter.
Right. Okay.
Yep. And following up, finishing with the white division, Joe, St. Lawrence. So state runner-up last year. They open up with Noble Academy at home, public school team, Chicago public school team. And then they travel to Evanston. And this will be a test on the road, So they've got St. Lawrence has a lot of people to replace, and including Aaron Ball, one of the top performers in the conference last year at running back, and their quarterback. So they have they love that run heavy offense as well, St. Lawrence, and I love how they play. I think they've got a formula that really works for them, but putting new people in place, it might take a little time, and at Evanston is going to be interesting to watch how this shakes out.
Yeah.
So I know that was quick for the white division, but some interesting games there. I think the one that I would probably look at as one to watch would be week 2, Fenwick hosting St. Ignatius.
Yeah, that's going to be a good game. Like you said, it might be a it might be a game that Ignatius really is pointing to right away, right?
Yep, for
Um,
sure.
they want some retribution from last year.
Always such a great thing about high school football is that these multi-year or at least 2-year contracts, and ones like this that are rivalries as well. To see them go back and forth, that's definitely one of the fun things about high school football.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. So, all right, let's move to the Orange Division now. So the Orange Division has got Joliet Catholic, Marist, Notre Dame, and Providence, right? So Joliet Catholic has scheduled this year for their first game against Iowa City, and it's in Iowa, if you didn't, if you couldn't
Okay.
figure that out. You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
Iowa City, they were 6-4 last year. Now they played Joliet Catholic last year in the first game of the season too, and Joliet Catholic won that game big, 48-13. Um, they had their hands full with Joliet Catholic last year, and it's probably going to be more of the same this year. Now, Iowa City's going to travel to Joliet Catholic this year to play this game. And one of the interesting things was this is their first ever out of state game for them. Can you believe that for a program? I
Not
mean,
sure I'd want to do that in Joliet. I mean, not that Joliet, but against Joliet Catholic. I mean, that's is quite a welcome to Illinois.
yeah. I mean, Iowa City is, a pretty well known, established program
Sure.
in Iowa, and considered one of the top programs in the state of Iowa. But last year they ran into a Joliet Catholic team, as you know how good they were, and I think it's going to be more of the same this year. Yeah, yeah. So that'll be interesting to see. I would imagine that game is going to be packed at Joliet Catholic this
Oh
year.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. If they're anything like the Hawkeye fans, they travel really well. I would expect nothing less from the Iowa City high school team, and think that they would love to play the traditional, see what the traditional powerhouse of Joliet Catholic, what the stadium looks like, and see kind of the field and uh, try and soak up all that tradition that Joliet Catholic has to offer.
yeah, for
See
sure.
if they can beat Rudy.
Right, exactly. Uh, yeah. So the next team, Marist. So their first game of the year, they're going to play Morgan Park. So Marist last year was 6-6 overall, 1-2 in the division. Um, Last year they played Glenbar West in their first game of the year and lost 7-6, so a close game. This year they play Morgan Park from the Public League, who actually had a really good season. Was ten
Oh
and
yeah,
two last year,
always
seven and
really good.
7-0 in the
Yeah,
conference.
yeah.
Their only two losses came against Chicago Catholic League teams. They lost to Mount Carmel 22-12, gave them a game in the non-conference game, and then later on in the year they lost to St. Francis 37-14 in the playoffs. I think even though the Marist program is very good and seems to be pretty consistent, but this is going to be a real test for Marist. Especially Marist defense, because Morgan Park seems to be a little, score a lot of points.
Yeah, it'll be. I wonder if this is the first game, Joe, where we have a Catholic League school that is, a true underdog. I mean, who knows Loyola and East St. Louis, but well, and I guess we'll get to them. But I might think that Marist might be an underdog week one against Morgan Park. Where's that game at?
I believe that is at Morgan Park this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
At Marist is a thing. Now that is not an easy place to play. The students are awesome. The atmosphere is great, and it is truly one of the places where, back in my coaching days, where you felt like you were a road team. And a lot of high schools can be, you're indifferent, whether you're home or road. The hardest thing is the travel and the logistics of it. But Marist is a difficult place to play, so that definitely gives more of an edge, I think, to Morgan Park, that Marist is going to go there.
Yeah, that's going to be a good game to watch for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
one to keep an eye on.
Marist's got something to prove this year. They want to come out. They Last year was not typical, not what we've seen from Marist for the past 20 years. So
Right.
so I think they definitely will come out ready to go. But that's going to be a great game.
Yeah. So the next team is Notre Dame, Niles, right? They're playing St. Patrick in a non-division or non-conference game, first game of the year, but then the second game they're going to play Sterling at Sterling. Sterling, part of the Western Big Six conference. So, Notre Dame had a tough year last year. They were 3-8, 0-3 in the division. Um, rough year for them. Although they did start out the season 2-0, they beat St. Patrick and then they beat Willowbrook in their non-conference games. Um, so things were looking up until they actually got into the meat of their schedule, right? So this year they replaced Willowbrook with Sterling, who went 5-6
Yikes.
last year. They did make it into the playoffs, where they eventually lost to St. Francis again in a blowout, right? It seems like everybody we're talking about here has lost to St. Francis at some point. you know,
Yeah, Sterling's a storied program in the state of
yeah,
Illinois. Yeah, they've got skins on the ball for sure. They are a traditional powerhouse. Yeah, so they will look to get things started, on the right foot against Notre Dame. Notre Dame, that is a great. I love that scheduling for both teams. I think Sterling wants to. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they said, let's try and schedule someone in the Catholic League so we can get an idea of what we're looking at. They are. Coaches won't say this, but they're probably scheduled that thinking about the playoffs and having that experience of playing a tough Notre Dame team, that will give them all they can handle. Whether Notre Dame was down last year or not, they'll be prepared. They will be able to execute. They'll play really tough defense. So yeah, that's a really really fun non-conference schedule for ND.
yeah, you would expect this to maybe be a close game, but like you said, in with Marist and Morgan Park, where Marist might be the underdog, I think Notre Dame might be the underdog here too. In
Yeah,
this game. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's good, and I guess that can take us right to the purple division, where I can go right back. That traditional rivalry, St. Patrick's, opens at Notre Dame, week one, and as we're talking about, it is those schools, Joe, 8.1 miles apart,
Uh,
and that they are. I'm going to say they truly don't like one another. I think that they have a rivalry that is true, and there is, while they probably both will draw from the same areas as far as the kids they get, it's a big time rivalry. Kudos to both these teams for scheduling it when they wouldn't necessarily have to. They kept that rivalry alive. Um, I'm glad they get to continue to play. It's going to be a great barometer for both teams coming into the year. I think they both need that week one victory to feel really good about, how their offseason prepared them for this year. They both have key positions that have to be filled. So it is, that'll be a great week one game for St. Pat's and for Notre Dame. St.
where's
Pat's
where's
goes. Oh,
that at? Where are they playing that at, Dan?
that's at ND, at Notre Dame in
Oh,
Niles.
okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Side note: fun place to go watch a game because the after Notre Dame, a lot of fun places to go out, around there, get have a meal and a beer. So it's I always like scouting at Notre Dame
So
because it was fun.
so this is for sure a road trip for us.
Could be a road trip for us. Yep. I always volunteered to scout Notre Dame because I find myself in Edison Park one way or another afterwards. So, um, yeah, really fun. But they go to Larkin and Elgin week two, but the highlighted one is for sure week one against Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, that's
moving
gonna be
to St. Viator. St. Viator will travel out of state, so they are going up to Riverside High School in Wisconsin. Uh,
woohoo.
so yeah, so and week two they have Hyde Park. They host Hyde Park, so they will be behind the Cheddar Curtain week one in Riverside, and will be a good test. I think they are two teams that probably had. I think they had similar records last year, but I know St. Viator is expecting big things. They have. It's never easy to travel out of state. I think sometimes, if you're not playing a regional or national powerhouse and you travel, like I talked about before, you could sometimes take teams lightly, or the unknown becomes a factor. how well will we travel? Will we get there on time? Is the bus going to be there? Fine, all that. But it should tell us a lot about this year's St. Viator team, which appears to be one of the favorites in the Purple Division based on the returners.
Yeah, you would think, based on, they've got their top player coming back, right, at
Yeah.
the key position at quarterback. So
Mm-hmm.
it'll be interesting to see how he performs week one. I think that'll be a good barometer to see how they're going to do the rest of the season.
Yeah, teams will definitely take note of that within the Purple Division about how St. Viator performs week one.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
look at Hyde Park stepping up and playing Catholic League teams here.
I know. I know there's some schools that just say, "Hey, bring it on," and I
Yeah,
I love it. I really do. I give them a lot of credit. I know. I would think if I was a coach at one of those places, I would want this experience, regardless of how it goes. You could use that. You're going to improve a lot based on these games. If you're, and Hyde Park is no pushover, so they're going to get that experience.
yeah,
If they are a playoff team, these first 2 week games against Montini and St. Viator will do nothing but be positives for them as they move through their schedule.
yeah, for sure. Okay.
Yeah. DePaul Prep, Joe, they open against Deerfield.
Ah,
They host Deerfield week one. So I'm really interested in DePaul Prep as a whole. I think while they lost pretty handily to Deerfield week one, so they've got that revenge factor, but they've also got you know both a passing combination back that's in Rodriguez and Peavy that are really good and probably poised to have a really nice year. That year under their belt, uh, they moved from the red division to the purple. I think I could see really good things for DePaul, and I would not count them out in this division. So it'll be really interesting to see how they match up against Deerfield, whom they lost to, like I said, pretty handily, and see what happens, how different they look um, week one of this year. Now, it's high school football, so it's not like there's a bunch of holdover, people like an NFL team, but it still you can kind of get a feel for some things, maybe how the season's going to go based on previous matchups.
yeah, and kudos to them for taking on Deerfield again, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Based on what happened last year, but like you said, DePaul, they seem to be a team on the up and up, and on the come here in the Chicago Catholic League. So it'll be interesting to see the progress they've made from last year to this year, and right away we'll see what that might be. When they play this Deerfield again, and see how they do against them this year.
yeah. And then they're at Old East Suburban Catholic school, Marion Central Catholic in Woodstock. So they'll have a good week two challenge as well. Marion Central maybe down a little bit from previous years or where they were at their height, but it'll be a great test for DePaul to see how they do. Um, and wrapping up the Purple Division, we'll talk about Bennett a little bit. And you want to talk about kudos? How about week two? Bennett hosts Moline. This will be the sixth year in a row that these two schools play. I believe Bennett has won. This may be year seven. Anyway, whatever it is, Bennett has won every game. In some of those years, Joe, Bennett was the only loss that Moline suffered until they went to the playoffs. So if I were Moline, I would have this game highlighted, circled, bolded. There is no way I want to lose to Bennett again. And while they've got to come from Moline, it's not that bad of a ride. It is easy to get to back and forth to those schools. So I expect a great game. Moline is ground and pound, try and have possession of the ball for a good majority of the game, and I think Bennett will be a little more high flying, returning quarterback in Ryan Kubaki, but this is always a great test for Bennett and for Moline, and this is one of those great schools to schedule if you're Bennett because it's a great test. There's obviously you have a great competitive shot to bring home the victory. Um, Again, not easy by any stretch. A lot of these games, most of the games have been really tight, but Moline has traditionally gone on to get a lot of playoff points for Bennett because they have a successful program and they do well in their conference. So it's a good one, and I give Moline credit. Week one, Bennett has Hillcrest, another one that you could say, hey, that's a good for Hillcrest. You know, they probably have the playoffs in mind, thinking about their schedule, early schedule with Montini and Bennett. Bennett will be at Hillcrest week one. Not easy at all for Bennett. Like I said, Hillcrest can give you a lot of problems with their offense. They have some skill people that can know how to get in the end zone. So they will they will give Bennett all they can handle. So Bennett's got a good and challenging non-conference schedule.
Yeah, and I remember that game last year, against Moline. Bennett had some big plays, right, that really put Moline behind the eight ball, and put Bennett ahead. And Moline, had a tough time considering the offense that they run. Had a real tough time coming back from a couple touchdown, deficit.
Yeah, that's the key against those teams. Yeah. Get up and challenge them to throw the football.
Yep, like the ground and pound, and sometimes that's tough when you're behind by a couple of touchdowns.
Right.
All right, good. So let's go to the blue division, right? So first team, Loyola Academy, and got to talk about who their first opponent is, and that's East St. Louis. We mentioned this earlier in the podcast. But last year, East St. Louis was 10-3, 5-0 in their conference. They lost again to Cary Grove in the 6A state championship game.
Yeah, what a game!
I know, awesome game. Last year they played Mount Carmel in their first game, and they lost 36-33. Really good game too. As you know, year in, year out, strong program, willing to play anybody, always a threat to compete for a state championship. This game to me is must see TV. You got to go out and see this one. And you and I talked about maybe if we are going to go out to a game, and this would be the one to go out to in week one, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, if this were a college game, Joe, the equivalent of that would be like week one, SEC matchup versus Notre Dame, or Michigan, Alabama again, or a repeat of something along those lines. This is one that you would say, I'm going to be home to make sure I am watching this game. This is two Titans. And it is going, I think it's going to be a ton of points. I just think it's with what East St. Louis has returning and Loyola, the skill that they return, a quarterback and running back, I think that they have, it's going to be an awesome game.
It is. And Loyola is, seems to be willing to play anybody, right? They'll take on anybody who wants to play them. I mean, last year they played Catholic Central, which I think in their first non-conference game, and then they played Naperville North in the second game. They won both those. That Catholic Central team is from Michigan.
Yeah.
After they lost to Loyola in the first game, they then ran the table to a Michigan State championship, finishing 13-1.
Yeah.
So how good does that say that Loyola is? But East St. Louis in the same category, right? In the same stratosphere as far as programs are concerned. So, this is for sure a game to watch week one.
Yeah, it will be an awesome thing, and we've given kudos to some of these schools for scheduling within the public league. How about some kudos to Loyola? Week one, host East St. Louis. Week two, you think, hey, maybe we'll find someone that's a little easier, and prepare for our division or our conference schedule. Nope, they come out to Glenbard West, and that powerhouse of a program and proud program, going to be going to be a title contender. This could be, depending. I don't know if Glenbard West, they might be 7A, but it is going to be 2 weeks in a row that those are games that are really, really good.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Tough schedule for Loyola. I don't think they're too worried about playoff points at this point. I think they're probably more concerned about taking on the best competition they can throughout the season and ending up with another state championship.
Yep.
Yeah, so let's go to Mount Carmel. Um, so Mount Carmel, last year's 7A state champs, they are taking on a team called Hun High School, which is a team out of New Jersey. I believe that Hun is coming to Mount Carmel for this game. So Hun High School went 8-1 last year. In their wins last year, they averaged over a 30-point differential, Dan.
Wow.
They're similar, from what I could tell, they're similar to like IMG Academy. So they get a lot of good players that come in. They're in Princeton, New Jersey. There
Okay.
seem to be a feeder program for a lot of the East Coast colleges. So really good team. It'll be interesting to see how Mount Carmel does. It's going to be a real test for them.
Yeah, that is something. I didn't realize that they were opening with them, Joe. Honestly, I thought it was Huntley, but that is. I'm glad you did the research on it because that will be really exciting, and we could spend the weekend in the blue division, with Hun
Right.
on Friday night and Loyola and East St. Louis, kind of two national games in week one. So really exciting. Yeah, Mount Carmel and is always, they're in the position of reloading now, so that'll be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, it will be. All right. So the next team is Brother Rice. They will, in the first game of the year, they're going to be playing Phillips. Um, Phillips last year, I believe, was 6-6, 4-3 in the conference. They lost big to Boylan Catholic in the playoffs. Again, Phillips is another team that can be dangerous. They
Oh
can
yeah.
score a lot of points. Brother Rice is a team that's shown that they're ready to contend, right?
Yep.
With some of the big boys in the CCL. So, this will be a good game. First game of the year. I'm sure Brother Rice has scheduled this knowing that it's going to be a test for them, but I think they probably scheduled this too, hoping that this is going to be a win for them, and they'll pick up good 6-7 playoff points at the end of the year.
Yeah, well, Phillips is just a couple years removed from having a dominant 3 or 4 years with at least one state title. They are a proud program. Always gets good players. I think they've maybe had a change in staff last year. So maybe step back last year, but certainly no one to take lightly.
No, absolutely not. All right, so the last team in the division is St. Ignatius. So they've scheduled the team non-conference game for their first week of the season. St. Louis University from St. Louis, Missouri. Um, this school is considered somewhat of a dynasty in the St. Louis area. The last couple of years, I guess they've had down years, considering the success that they've had over the course of the program. I think last year they were 7-5, 2-2 in their district or division. Last year's Ignatius was 8-4, 5-2 in the CCL, 3-0 in their division. They lost to Loyola in the playoffs. No shame there. Ignatius had, from what I could tell, Ignatius had no non-conference games last year. So this will be a change for them. It's kind of them. Obviously they stepped up as a program last year,
Yeah.
considering how well they did. I think they're trying to kind of take the next step here and, traveling out to Missouri and playing a good team from St. Louis.
Yeah, I think if you looked at a diagram of St. Ignatius over the past several years, it'd be like a chart where that line of success would just keep going up a little by a little by a little by a little, and they continue to bring in a lot of players. They have a lot of players that are on the varsity level, but they're lower level, very healthy program. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in St. Louis. You'll be a good test early on.
Yeah, it will be.
All right.
All right.
So we've
Who do we
gone through
got
everything.
left
We've
here,
got the
Dan?
red. We've got the red division, Joe.
Red
Uh,
Division. All
red
right.
division. So we'll start with De La Salle, and De La Salle hosts Argo week one out of Summit. And Argo was a playoff team last year. I think over the past year or two, Argo has is one of those teams that went from very downtrodden to competitive. So they are a program on the rise. De La Salle has a new head coach in Harold Blackman, who just a little plug here, who we did have a chance to speak with, and he'll be on the pod at some point in the near future. But I love Argo as a test for them week one. They'll host Argo, and it should be a really uh, good test for first year coach Harold Blackman. So De La Salle hosting Argo week one, and then they host Foreman from the Chicago Public League in week two. Leo hosts Julian week one, and
Interesting matchup.
it is both teams can score, but Leo really needs to show that they can shore up a defense that was pretty porous once they got into league play last year, and I think it's something that Julian provides a really good test for them to see just where they stand at defensively, physically. They might be playing a lot of young players. I think their freshman class last year was a big class, a lot of football players. So it would not surprise me. That was Coach Stevenson's first year. So that was kind of the first class that came in under him. Wouldn't surprise me if you saw a lot of sophomores playing. So it is a great chance to see how they stack up week one against Julian. Week two, they stay in the public league. They go to Amundsen, so they will have two good tests, good barometer games. See where they're at physically, and be before they get into league play, like that early schedule. Um, Moving on, we go to Marian Catholic. So Marian Catholic, interesting. They're at Rich Township, so kind of two what I would call rivalry games between public schools and private schools. Rich Township is close by to Marian Catholic, and week two though is kind of the game I highlighted here. They host Homewood Flossmoor. So guess how close Homewood Flossmoor is, Joe, to Marian Catholic?
7.1
Oh,
miles.
way too far. Way too far. So Marian Catholic and Homewood Flossmoor are 4.3 miles away. Literally, like you could run that and you could do that in 25 minutes, I think.
Do you have MapQuest open? Is that what it is?
I did when I was looking at it. Yes. Yeah, whenever these are, I think rivalry, I like to think of the narrative that these kids all know one another. And I think
Yeah,
there's transfers back and forth too.
you could have facilitated by taking different routes to stay consistent with the 8.1 miles, 9.1 miles, or whatever between all these schools.
I probably could have lied too, right? And said something. I don't think
No, no,
anyone's going to fact check me.
not you. You never lie.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But yeah, this is a great rivalry game. Marian Catholic, Joe, won an absolute barn burner last year, 54-47 at Homewood
Woo.
Flossmoor. So yeah, this
Yeah.
is this is a fun one. If we, for some reason, are looking for somewhere to go week two, I really, really would like to see this game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Marian Catholic's got to replace some people. They have some losses through graduation and transfer. They'll be looking, but I know that They're one of these programs that have been building. They have a great tradition to kind of stand on as a foundation. So I think they've been getting better and better every year. But Homewood Flossmoor kind of the same thing, looking to kind of take a next step. So I really am excited about that week 2 game where Marion Catholic will host Homewood Flossmoor. And wrapping it up, Joe, we go to Marmion Academy. Marmion Academy opens with Oak Forest. So kind of the interesting thing here is that Marmion will have a new coach, Adam Guerra, who he'll be able to see what he's got week 1, and against an Oak Forest team that should provide a good test. I think both teams may have been 2-7 last year, so both will be looking to have a great first impression. Week 2, Marmion hosts Noble Academy out of the Chicago Public League, so that will be kind of a good stepping off point for Marmion going into their conference schedule. But I've highlighted the Oak Forest game because I think whenever you're a new coach, even though Coach Guerra is experienced, he's experienced in the Catholic League. I think he will. I think it's you never quite know what you have. I think a first year head coach, I think it's always exciting. It'll be interesting to see Marmion again, like all these schools, just awesome tradition, and will be really interesting to see how they open the year, how they look different maybe than previous years under new coach Coach Guerra. So
Yeah,
that wraps up our red division.
yeah, I think this is smart scheduling too
Yeah,
on behalf of Marmion. I mean, they've got 2 teams here who are, maybe not had the best of records over the past couple of years, but will provide some, a bit of a test for Marmion and really get a gauge as to see where they're at. So I'll be interested to see how they fare against Oak Forest and Noble Academy.
me too. And they moved from the purple division to the red division, so it will be really interesting. I think we'll probably do our division looks later on this summer as far as where we our predictions for how they pan out. But be interested to see how Marmion, moving from the purple division to the red division stacks up. And, like I said, Marion Catholic's got losses. I think they probably would be the favorite again, but always interesting. Marmion always has, fun teams, good, well coached teams. So I don't expect anything different. But yeah, at some point, Joe, I think if you're in a position like Marmion and maybe some of these others, we've talked a lot about, well, how do we position ourselves for playoff, and that sort of thing. But you've got to know what you have. I don't think I think I think Coach Guerra, and I don't want to speak for him, but some of these coaches would think, I can't think about playoffs. I've got to think about how we look on day 1 and what we're going to look like and how we get better as a program without worrying about, how many points we're going to have at the end of the year.
Right. Yeah. So one of the things that this episode, Dan, or this discussion has done for me, and some of the research I've done leading up to it, I'm starting to get excited about the season, right?
Yeah.
And I think those our listeners are starting to get excited too, and I think this will prompt them if they didn't have that little flicker under them already.
Right.
I think this kind of thing gives you that little flicker because what is this? A month out, maybe?
Well, we're probably 5 or 6 weeks away. So, yeah. So, I mean, I think a lot of teams took off last week for the holiday, so they'll be back practicing again this week. Probably with the idea of going, through the rest of July to do install and get physically ready before camp opens, in the second week of August. And it is, it gets close. And, I get more excited the earlier, every year because the baseball teams in town are so terrible. So it's like I'm searching for something to get excited about. And looking at this schedule, it does it. It definitely will make you think about how you want to plan your first weeks of the high school football season.
Yeah, the other thing, and I haven't told the family this yet, and
Uh-oh.
when they listen to the podcast, they'll probably come screaming at me.
Yeah.
But based on some of these games that I really want to see and go to, I think we're going to have to cancel some vacation stuff like that.
Yeah, or you could do what I've done in the past and find the feed for the games, and your family will really love it when you go inside on Friday night and you say no dinner tonight. Bring me something to drink. I've got three different games on this hotel TV that I'm streaming through my computer. That's how we're going to spend our first Friday night on vacation.
Yeah, you've got your headphones on and your headset
Right.
going.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you
yeah,
bring the TV from the bedroom out into the family room, so you got multiple TVs, several screens. You've got the kids' computers, your phone, everything. You'll you'll have the electricity bill for the room for that week will be. You're going to get a call from the hotel.
right. Well, great discussion, Dan. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. Starts to get my blood boiling a bit as far as the season that's upcoming, and I can't wait for it to get started. So, hope our listeners enjoyed the discussion as well. And that's it for this week's episode. Thank you again for listening. Make sure you tune in next week where we will start to preview some of the divisions, take a closer look at the teams and some of the players. We've got Dan has done some good interviews, and we've got some other interviews scheduled with some of the head coaches. So we'll sprinkle that in here and there in some of the upcoming episodes. So make sure you don't miss them. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple, other places where you might get your podcasts. You can also find us on any of the podcast services by searching Varsity Voices, Chicago Catholic League Football. You can also follow us on X at varsity_voices1. And if you want to email us, you can do that at varsityvoices312@gmail.com. And make sure you come back and tune in next week. Thank you again for listening.